When a man is established in continence or celibacy, we save energy. This is one of the fundamental, foundational, and prerequisite principles when understanding Vedic terminology. Another simpler way is the simple understanding of cause and effect. For every action, there's going to be an equal and opposite reaction, and the Vedas understand this as karma. Karma literally stands for action. So the principal foundation in which we build the idea that there is always a consequence to any kind of sexual licentious behavior is rooted in a simple cause and effect. So virya means vital energy. Labha means profit. When there is no loss of virya, we gain energy. So this idea of sexual energy or continence has some continuum or continuity with the concept of virya in a Vedic lexicon. What we gain by saving this is worth knowing. In the name of loving and giving, many times we lose this energy and become mentally and physically depleted. So do know the terms that they use when loving and giving. Now, I would make the argument that loving and giving is certainly not analogous or represented in terms of how modern Western man and women actually use their sexual behavior. It's more from the concept of taking instead of giving, and certainly not in love, but in lust. And in this way, we lose more because we're not spiritually coming from a pure place. If we are not strong mentally and physically, we can never gain real spiritual wealth. I've said many times that one of my favorite occultists, philosophers, psychologists, and thinkers is Rudolf Steiner. And one of the interesting concepts Rudolf Steiner delineates in his book, Access to Higher Worlds and in the Path of, or the Way of the Initiate into occultism, which just means knowledge hidden from the masses, is that an individual cannot access the spiritual platform unless he has been practiced in celibacy. In this way, it is a man that has entered into full ownership and jurisdiction over his faculties. Like if we can't master the physical world, if we can't master the body, if we can't master the mind through meditation, through fasting, which is all, again, a demonstration of this kind of control an individual has over himself, then how can we expect to access and develop our spiritual organs? This is all a prerequisite to growing these sense organs, spiritual organs, in order to decipher and interpret spiritual information. In the same way, you would never know smell if you hadn't developed a nose. You wouldn't have an organ of your nose in order to interpret the information through different chemicals in the air. In the same way, if you're going to interpret spiritual information, then you must develop your spiritual faculties, which are corresponded to the endocrine system. And you might better know them as the wheels, the chakras. So you have, the root, you have the sacral, and so on and so forth. And they correspond to health in the area of the particular endocrine system. So root is the genital area, the generator of energies. It's interesting, the vernacular and the etymology of the word, how they correspond with what they fundamentally mean. Sexual energy, genitals, generation of power. So we cannot gain true spiritual wealth if we are ignorant in this respect. The main cause for the present chaotic condition amongst the young is ignorance over this concept of virya. So again, people laugh at the concept. I mean, you can't even have a mature modern conversation with the average man or woman about celibacy without being laughed at. I mean, imagine talking to your friends about celibacy. Imagine talking about, again, the average 25-year-old man or 20-year-old man about celibacy. You'd be laughed out of the room because, again, our culture has been inundated by sexual licentious behavior as being the god that everybody serves. I mean, that's the reason why some men go to work. That's the reason why some men get out of bed. It's not for God. It's not for religion. It's not for the love and the joy of the work. It's for that drug PUSSY. Young people say when you love somebody, how can you stop giving? But out of love, they do not know what to give. Sometimes they even give venereal disease. They lose their health and spoil the health of the ones that they love. Can you say you love me and completely drain my blood and poison my system? No. If you love a child, will you make the child eat a box of candy? I love this analogy, by the way. I'm just going to read this one more time from the start. If you love a child, will you make the child eat a box of candy? That isn't love. It is mere thoughtlessness. If you really love the child, you would say, candy's not good for you. Once in a while, you can have some, but I won't buy you an entire box, even though the child is unhappy about it. You are proving yourself to be a loving friend. So I'll talk about the analogy he's drawing here to brahmacharya, but my personal interpretation is, again, there's nothing wrong with sweets. There's nothing wrong with indulging ourselves sexually with other people. But the point is, too much of a good thing, individuals, as I prefaced, base their whole existence over pursuit of this particular thing. And its pursuit is fruitless. In many ways, people will have their comedic reactions and throw stones at this, concept that anybody denigrating sex work, promiscuity, or the equivalent is a virgin or a loser. And that's fine. But in the same way, I kind of see that from the perspective of a child who is being told that, well, no, you can't eat the entire box of candy because your teeth will rot and you will get sick. The same way, these individuals will never hold a loving, compassionate relationship because they have sullied their soul and traded their dignity and self-respect. Again, it doesn't bring me any kind of pleasure to say these things. That's just the reality of what these individuals are doing. So I'll read their definition. The case of brahmacharya is like that. So brahmacharya, you can see here the Sanskrit interpretation here, but I've mentioned this before. Brahman is reference to the absolute God, and charya means to move with, or some people even call this path. So you talk about the path to God is brahmacharya. More specifically, continence, moderation, keeping the sense strong, calm, aligned with the creative energy. Vriya, reference to vigor, strength, vital power, and energy. And I always make the scientific analogy to testosterone, masculine power, whatever you want to call it. The seminal fluid gives strength and stamina to the brain and nerves. Nervous debility is caused by lack of stamina because it has all been drained away. There's some interesting journals that reference this concept of neurasthenia, which is essentially a debilitation of the nervous system that comes when individuals are particularly sexually licentious, when they're sexually exhausted and sexually fatigued. They did studies on individuals who were visiting, I suppose you can call them ladies of the night, or who were indulged in compulsive self-pleasuring, and how debilitating this was for the nervous system. In fact, prolactin, which is released after sexual copulation and ejaculation, is neuroprotective, meaning the body tries to protect the nervous system after every attempt to reproduce, because it's actually very, very taxing on the body. And an individual that's compulsively doing that is taxing and debilitating his nervous system over time. This is why weakness, why sickness occurs soon after. If sex is the only form of loving, then how can a brother and sister love one another? A son and mother, daughter and father. Sex is not the only way to show love. If love is based only on physical contact, the mind will never be satisfied with just one. Today there will be honey, tomorrow that honey, the third day another honey. Where is the limit? This fluid is our life. If stored properly, it can bring a lot of energy. When absorbed into the system, it gets transformed into prana. Prana is energy, the energy of breath in this way. Conserved sexual energy in women also gets transformed. It is that vital force that allows you to really help people and have good relationships. Without much prana, we can never give anything to anybody. Just as only a fully charged battery can give power, never a weak one. In observing brahmacharya, we build up this energy. More credence to this idea that this is not a unlimited resource, similarly to time, similarly to money. We're very particular in where we allow these particular assets to be invested in a similar or not too dissimilar way. I always make the point that equally you should be careful who you share your sexual energy with. There are many individuals, and I've participated in this, especially when I was at university, where you have individuals who, there's no love, there's no compassion in your particular relationship. It's merely using one another's body as a means to gratify oneself. And, that is a very fruitless and needless form of investment that is not going to yield you much fruit in the long term, because you dilute your soul and actually you lose your ability to share intimacy through a medium of love. That's something that you share, but lust is something that you take. And that's the problem with modern culture, is that it's predicated on a taking, a taxing, a taking advantage of, instead of a sharing of these particular forces. A yogi should always keep this in mind. Teaching yoga is not like teaching history or geometry. Teachers must impart a life force, a little current into others. How can they do this if they are weak, if they have a run-down, discharged batteries? So keep your batteries full of energy. That doesn't mean you must completely stay away from sex. Instead, be moderate. Preserve as much energy as possible. I've always made the point, because many people ask me, Joseph, I am in a relationship and I would like to integrate some of this practice into my relationship, is fundamentally view it through the axiom of it is, it's just as I said, it's an asset. If you're doing something or ensconced in a project or an activity that is going to be very, very demanding of your energy, then I think it would be an intelligent and competent decision to show a little bit of restraint and conservation of virya in these particular aspects and avenues of your life. There's a reason why you hear, these very interesting stories about boxers who are leading up to a big fight and have to conserve a lot of energy, why continents such as Muhammad Ali, such as individuals like Mike Tyson, even David Hay in more, let's say, modern times, would exercise this particular conservation of vital virya. Just going to skip ahead to the observation of celibacy, in which we preserve not just physical energy alone, but mental, moral, intellectual, and ultimately spiritual energy as well. Sexual energy that is preserved gets transformed into a subtle energy called ojas. This is similar to personal magnetism, so the notions that individuals becoming more attractive and getting more attention from the female counterpart, it is a delineation of the ojas principle in the Vedic vernacular. It tones the entire personality, it builds the nerves, it improves brain power and calms the mind. There is a similar word to ojas in English, ozone. In the early morning before sunrise, we can go out and breathe the ozonic wind, which has a special vibration and energy to it. But once the sun's rays fall, the effect is lost. That's why the period between 4 and 6 in the morning is called the Brahmanic time, or the divine period, and is a very sacred time to meditate. From ojas, tejas is occurring. Tejas is the aura or the glow. A newspaper reporter once wrote an article about me called "The Swami That Makes the People Glow." And this is Patanjali, who wrote the sutras. How can the Swami do this? Is it some particular yogic makeup? No. Everybody can glow, can transmit the energy when they preserve a lot of ojas, which is transmutated into tejas. Every ordinary carbon left under the earth in an airtight chamber for a considerable time gets hardened, changes its color and becomes like a diamond. If you preserve honey, it gets crystallized. In the same way, when the semen gets transformed and diffused, this is why continence is a very important part of yoga. If a handful of people come forward with strong wills, nothing is impossible. One Buddha changed half the globe, one Jesus, 3/4 of the world. We all have that capacity. Let us know the value of brahmacharya that is certainly making us strong, happy, healthy, wealthy, and blissful. One of the key elements that goes into different parts of the sutras and Vedic knowledge in general is also control of prana. So prana sexual energy is often referred to as Shakti energy. And what has been made very, very clear to me when you view this particular subject from the Vedic lens is that Shakti energy will always follow prana, which is breath. Individuals that are looking to court more jurisdiction over not just the sexual dimension of the human being, but also themselves, begin with very simple exercises in breath work. You can find a guided Shakti breath work on my Patreon, and that is the first tier. You can find that, and it is a tremendous exercise that shows an individual how to have more intention behind their breath, and as a consequence you can move Shakti, Virya, Ojas, Tejas, whatever you want to call it, with more intention through the body. It's helped many people so far, and it could be of tremendous resource to you as well. These are not theories, gentlemen, they're facts. Speak soon.